microphone, and if you would, please raise your hand. He'll come over and give you the microphone to ask the question so that everybody can hear the question. So our speaker tonight is not, I repeat, not running for political office. This is not going to be a political speech, but rather an informative talk, again with Q&A. The intent of tonight's discussion is to inform us of the upcoming proposal of limited purpose annexation from the perspective of the city of San Antonio. So please be respectful of the messenger. He's here to inform us only. I do not know if he agrees with the annexation of Alamo Ranch, but he is being told to plan for it. Mr. John Dugan is a professional city planner, community and economic developer, and planning educator. He holds a master's degree in city and regional planning from Harvard. He has managed planning programs in a wide range of local government jurisdictions, including Norfolk, Virginia, Sonoma County, California, Oklahoma City, and Los Angeles, California. He's also directed long-range planning for Washington, D.C.'s National Capital Planning Commission, and he is currently Director of Planning and Community Development for the city of San Antonio, Texas. Mr. Dugan has also taught in several graduate city planning and public administration programs at Kansas State, Old Dominion, Memphis State, and George Washington Universities. He was also formerly professor of the practice of planning at the University of Oklahoma and has served on the faculty at California State University. He currently serves as adjunct professor of planning at UTSA. Mr. Dugan is married to Eileen Dugan, an educator and journalist, and they have two children, John and Therese. Please welcome Mr. John Dugan.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. 45 years I've been doing this. Getting a little tired of going, not public meetings, but sitting through planning commissions and city councils. So I'm happy to stand up and rather than sit down. I'm not going to advocate about annexation tonight. That's not my job. My job is to give you facts and some information about why the city is interested in this, and then answer some questions as best I can. And we have some frequently asked questions circulating, plus we have some on our website that we can talk to you about. But basically, let's put on the first slide here and just get into this. Let's take about 15 minutes and we can talk about it. Why are we doing this? The annexation program. Well, as you know, San Antonio is challenged, so we're going to be trying to handle unprecedented growth. We expect over 1 million people living here in the next 25 years. Half of that from growth, the demographic, births over deaths, and the others from the migration, because they'll be all new jobs that are here. Can you hear me okay? We can hold this up. We had to find a place to put all those people. And we're doing a big comprehensive plan right now, the first one in 35 years, to try to figure out how we can implement the vision of the 2020 program the city adopted several years ago, which is to become a world-class city, a city with vibrant neighborhoods, good transportation, and sustainable. To do that, that means trying to put as many of those people and 500,000 new jobs and 500,000 new houses in the existing footprint of the city. That's a big challenge. We have done a lot of detailed studies. We found 70,000 vacant lots in the city and underutilized properties. So with that assessment, we think we can put about 600,000 of those million people in the existing city footprint. That's so we need to find a place for another 400,000 people. And so that's why we need to look at expanding into Bexar County into what we call the ETJ, the extraterritorial jurisdiction of San Antonio, which is 5 miles from the current city limits. And on this map here, the green part, you can see it, that's the ETJ. Alamo Ranch is in the ETJ, and so is about 350,000 other people that are in the county that don't have any urban services, don't have any representation on the city council, but what the city council does affect you. So the city council asked me, asked my department, the city manager, to do a study to figure out where growth could take place. First of all, to see where growth is taking place and where growth will take place in the future, and then propose a process to address what should and shouldn't be in the city in the next decade. So that's what we call the Annexation 360 program. We'll talk about that. State law governs annexation in Texas, and it's a very detailed, many-step process that takes about 4 years, and we have to follow that. So I'll tell you about that. and then talk a little bit about, if you're interested, what the benefits of annexation might be. It's not all just more money out of your pocket, you get something for it. You have to decide whether you think it's worth it or not. So we'll talk about that at the end and then answer questions. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. So the next slide, why should we annex? Well, from the city's perspective, what we want to do is basically protect future development options. We want to facilitate long-range planning. We want to promote economic growth. We want to conserve another thing, our valued resources like the aquifer and the areas around the city where we get the infiltration for our water supply, the Edwards Aquifer. What annexation does is basically extend zoning and public health and safety codes. We're talking about the limited purpose now for 3 years. Right now there's no zoning in the county. It's illegal for the county to zone. Only the city can do that, or a city. Also, there's no building permits for single-family homes, so you may or may not know what you've got in there, but that's certainly something to be concerned about. And right now, you have no voice at all in terms of what happens in your community here, what happens behind your house in a vacant property, vacant lot. If it's not zoned, you have no council representatives, nobody you can go to, and the county has no management controls at all over growth. Anything could happen. I don't know that you want to do that, but that's the way it is now. And the county has told us that they cannot provide the urban level of services. 350,000 people, they do not have the legal authority to provide parks and recreation, solid waste, and other services, libraries, whatever. We look at a list later. All the things cities provide, counties can't by law in Texas. Other states, counties can, but not Texas. We've got a plan for this future growth, and we want to have orderly growth in the future, and we want to have public facilities, capital improvements, extension of roads, sewer, water that's coordinated, so that we have a good, great community here 25 years from now, like we do today, or better. So we want to enhance the city's position as a regional center in South Texas. Texas is going to double its population in the next 25 years. So is San Antonio. There are county to be 3 million people. 25 years, and that needs to be managed and coordinated as well. And basically, we want to do that as sustainably as possible, with the least expense as possible to everybody. So those are some of the objectives the council has. The next slide. And what they've done is asked us to put together this 360 annexation program to identify areas where the city can initiate annexation proceedings over a 10-year period. We're only right now looking at about 2 years. Estimate what it would cost, what the phasing is going to be, look at areas that would be excluded, with the caveat that the study we're doing, which is what it is, it's a study, it doesn't obligate the city to do anything after that 3-year study is over. They can say, okay, good study, sorry, we're not going to do anything, or they can say, yes, we'll follow it, or they can change it. It's basically a political decision following this very detailed state process. We looked at all the county in this 360 study. We found 30 areas that would be eligible for annexation, about 2/3 of the area of the county, about 300 so square miles. The council said that's too much. Give us the 5 priorities that we can look at in the next couple of years. And so this map here, the next one, shows those priority areas. On the north, I-10 West area, basically between the Locantera Mall and the city of Bernie, along I-10. On the north, due north, along 281 all the way up to the city of Bulverde. That's the blue area. Out to the east along I-10, an area between Converse and San Antonio that's developing quickly, and a lot of it's developed a long time ago, a lot of problems. That's a third area. Over on the west side, down by Lackland on Highway 90 and 1604, a lot of issues there about protecting Lackland's mission from encroachment. And then up here, in Alamo Ranch, and here to the west of Alamo Ranch, the West Point Pit area. We look at that area. So those are the high priority areas the council chose to study. And those together add up to about 66 square miles. Next slide. And right now, well, that slide shows there are 117,000 people in those 5 areas in 2010. We think there's probably about 150,000 50,000 there now, and the estimates are to go to 212,000 5 years from now. So that's a lot of the growth area around the city and a lot of the land around the city. We can't annex all that in 1 year by state law. You can only annex 10% of your area only in 1 year, and San Antonio's got 490 square miles now. So we can do 49 square miles. So the proposal, or really the direction from council is study the north, 281 the west, I-10, and the I-10 east this year in 2015, and then study Alamo Ranch area 151 and the Highway 90 area in 2016. So that's the overall direction we have. Study the area. What's going to happen for those northern three areas? By December of this year, we'll have a recommendation back to City Council saying we've met with neighborhoods like this. We've done detailed studies, we've done a lot of different pros and cons. Given the pros and cons, then they'll decide whether to go ahead with the limited purpose annexation for those other areas. Then there's a whole series of studies that have to happen during that 3 years, and I'll tell you what goes on then. In 2016, we started the detailed studies for the west side, and then at the end of 2016, about Christmas, we'd be again before council to talk about whether to go ahead or not with limited purpose for this area. So that's the big plan. Next slide. These will go through quickly here. What are we looking at? These slides here represent the policies the council adopted a couple of years ago to guide the annexation process for us, for the staff, to tell us where we want to look for places to annex. We want to look at areas where there's a lot of projected growth. That's why this area is on the list. I-10, I-281 here, big millions of dollars, almost $1 billion being put in improving 1604, 281, I-10, managed lanes, new interchanges, lots and lots of investment there. City wants to manage the growth around those interchanges. It's in the county now, no zoning, no management. Hence, let's look at these areas for growth for annexation. Extending municipal services. We have to coordinate how we provide services. So annexation areas can benefit from a higher level of service. By state law, if we annex, we have to provide services equal to that of an adjacent area in the city. Can't be anybody's, particularly for a public safety service. Eventually libraries, eventually parks, fire stations, all that has to be at the same level as in the city itself. That's part of the new law. It wasn't in effect the last time city annexed. Public safety, next slide. Health and safety concerns, intergovernmental strategies. We have to coordinate our growth with the other towns in Bear County and adjacent counties. Public health and safety, we want to protect the military operations. We want to control environmentally sensitive areas like the aquifers and manage the location of commercial growth. Right now in the county, any developer can put in a commercial area, shopping center, apartment complex without any input from anybody who lives nearby. I don't think that's fair, but that's the way state law has it in Texas. Next slide. This needs to be done fiscally conservatively, very efficiently, looking at balance here between costs and revenues. And we have to also recognize the new state law on non-annexation agreements. If your property, probably doesn't apply to you, but maybe some around here, is an agricultural exempt property, because it's an agricultural use, then it cannot be annexed for a 10-year period. And we agree to that as long as it stays in an annexation or an agricultural kind of use. Next slide. And then we've mentioned that the areas, the sort of first ones will be the areas on the north and the east. The second ones will be the areas on the west here. Next slide. Now, the next couple of slides, these are, probably can't see these, so I won't go through them slowly, but these are just the details about each of those areas. I-10 west, in terms of growth there, that's going to go from, right now 12,000 people to about 21,000 people. And this is where all that interchange improvements and widening of Interstate 10 is going to take place. Next slide, talk about the 281 priority area, the I-10 East priority area. And then, the next slide, the 2016 slide. The west side here, we're looking at the 151 and the Highway 90. And So here's Alamo Ranch. On the side over here, here's 1604. And there's 151. We're right now here, right smack in the middle of that area. Out to the west, it's all vacant there. When you get up on the hilltop to look west, it's just trees. That's the west side public improvement district, West Point, that's being proposed for another 20,000 people, about 3 million square feet of commercial space. City Council turned that down last year so that we could study it and incorporate it with this annexation evaluation. The area here, certainly the area bounded there, it's about 14 square miles, and we estimate a population of about 42,000 people in 5 years, probably about 25,000, 30,000 now. It has an assessed valuation right now of $1.3 billion. And if the city were to annex it and build out that 42,000 people, we would have a revenue tax of about $8 million a year coming in. The fiscal analysis that the budget people did showed that the cost of servicing this area as part of the city would equal the cost of the revenues of it coming in from taxes about 8 years after it was annexed, about the year 2028. Then after that, there'd be a surplus. The area would be producing more revenue than the cost of services. But it would take that long to do it. It would take about 13 years to actually get to that point year, 2029. In 20 years out, though, about the year 2030 and 2040, the area would be producing quite a bit of revenue, about $71 million a year. Surplus over the cost of the city. So the city council is looking at that, saying, well, that makes sense. It's a high growth area, the values are high, they should be in the city, they can contribute to the overall benefit of the city and help pay for the cost of streets and other things that people here use when they go into the city to go do things or work or visit. So that's sort of the rationale there. Okay, next slide. It's a 4-year process to get to a vote by the city council. So for Alamo Ranch here, the planning studies will start for those other areas. Planning study will start here in 2016. It'd be this limited purpose annexation and full purpose annexation. Add a year to that. This slide is those for those north areas, which is the same slide, but we add a year to that because we're not going to start it for 2016. So a decision will be made probably in December, around Christmas time of 2019, whether they annex the west side or not. So, as you know, a lot of things can happen in 4 years. Next slide. I'll show you what did happen on the south side. 2 years ago, the council looked on the south side when we had the City South Management Authority. There's a lot of probably read that paper for the previous years. We decided to dissolve that and to annex it and provide city services for that area instead of having a separate government that they've been having. So we studied this whole area south of 410, the south side of the county. And we looked 30 square miles there, and we looked with the council and said, oh, they studied that. We came back with the study, pros and cons, fiscal, met with neighborhoods. A lot of people opposed, most people opposed. Many people in favor, we were surprised to find out, because they were having problems with dumping, with conflicting land uses, with animals, with a lot of things, and they didn't have any, the county couldn't address those. So basically what we did, we brought that to council. After public hearings and meetings and all this, they cut the area back from 30 square miles to 19. We also had 180 property owners that had ag exemptions because their properties were in agricultural use. So it changed, certainly in that year study process from 30 square miles to 19. That was annexed permanently in February, or for limited purpose. Now we're in a detailed 3-year process to do a lot more detailed studies here. That won't be for council until 2017 for actual final annexation, and the boundaries could change. And so that's sort of how the process works. Next slide. this is what I just went over for the process here. It takes about a year to do this 1-year study going up the limited purpose. Again, this is for the northern areas for the December 2015 to December 2016 for Alamo Ranch. Okay, next slide. Now, what is this limited purpose annexation we're talking about? It's a technique, the first stage that the state allows cities to do. During this 3-year period, from the time the city council would say, okay, well, we'll consider this for limited purpose annexation. If you're part of the city, but not permanently, boundaries could change or could be completely deleted. Because of that, and that's why they call it limited, there's no city property or sales taxes at all in that 3-year period. Nothing changes there. The only change is that the development codes of the city applies. The zoning, property would be zoned for the first time. It would protect land uses. There would be building permits for the first time. To be sure that their houses are built correctly. And there would be public safety inspections that don't take place now. People that live in that area can vote in city elections. And the city council person in or out. The city would have to adjust its districts, election districts, the council districts, to include the new areas of limited purpose. The only thing is that people living in the limited purpose areas are not eligible to run for municipal office. You can vote, but you can't run for office until it's permanently annexed. This is all state code, and that's the way it is. Okay, next slide. Once the property is annexed for limited purposes, we have to do things. This is again by state code. The first year after it's limited purpose annexed, you've got to prepare a detailed land use plan and intensity plan to show where future services are going to come in. Parks, recreation, senior centers, whatever we have to do. New lighting, streets, whatever. Identify future capital improvement projects that would be in a bond issue, be constructed, street connections, interconnections, drainage, whatever it be. And then the third year, we have to adopt an actual capital improvement program, identifying the source of funding, develop a detailed service plan. And then all those new services would go into effect. And all that would have to be built. New fire station would be built. All these things within 36 months of being annexed. What's proposed in all of these different areas, next slide, is that we bring all of these 5 areas up to the level of city services that the county can provide. The county would like to do it, they just can't by state law. Basically, city public services, safety services, fire police, and emergency medical. A new fire station would be built, $15 million investment, right smack in the middle of Alamo Ranch, probably on the probably vacant land up there, right in the middle, right down the street from here. They have a 5-minute response time standard that they have to work to. And the boundaries for all of those areas I showed you were drawn right around the 5-minute response time from the fire department and emergency services. That's what's determining these boundaries. So you would provide street cleaning, road maintenance, access to solid waste collection and recycling services, building and maintaining parks, other facilities. The area would be eligible for new CIP bonds, capital improvement connection bonds for new roads and streets. Putting in 2 lanes where you have already only 2 lanes for a 4-lane street, connecting to other areas, making it part, physically of the city. Access to health and human service programs, code enforcement, which isn't in effect now, and zoning and, of course, development review. You guys say, take the zoning, the planning, city council, and right now somebody could come in with an apartment, subsidized housing, commercial office, 7-Eleven, and this is a big vacant lot, and put it in. I don't have anything to say about that, or do you?
Can I ask a question?
So how much would all this cost?
I have a question.
I'll get to the question in just a minute.
All right.
Almost done. Okay, let's say what would this cost to be annexed? If your property appraised at $300,000, we did this scenario. It's $150 to be half this. Right now, you're going to be paying about $6,000 a year for county, for school, for all the special districts. that's imposed right now by the county. In the city limits, there's an exemption if you're over age 65, they exempt $65,000 of whatever the value you have. So in this scenario, you really are taxed on the $237,000, not the $302,000. Your house is worth $150,000, you'd be taxed on 150 minus 65. Right now, taxes would be about $7,000 if annexed. So it's about a $1,000 increase per year. And basically, if you had a $150,000 house, you got a $500 increase per year. So that's basically the cost of getting all those city services. Of course. But city taxes haven't gone up for 25 years, so I'm not see it going up soon. The reductions that might take place are a couple. One, the SAWs, CPS, fees would go down here in the city limits by a certain percentage. I don't know what it would be based on how much you use, but it would go down. Also, your property, what you pay for property, for taxes and insurance on your homeowner's insurance would go down because of the rating of the fire department in San Antonio is a 2. I think the district here is either 4 or 6 or a combination thereof. And that would be about a 10 to 15% reduction, we estimate, what you would pay for your homeowner's insurance. So those would be 2 reductions there. But, it basically works out to be between probably $500 to $700 increase per year in taxes. And so you have to back that all up. So that's the facts. More information, here's a contact page here. A lady named Nina Nixon-Mendez in my department's the manager who's coordinating all these studies. And she's got some staff there. We've got a website there for posting information as we get it up there. This is again a 4-year process. Your area here won't be directly engaged for another year from now. But in the interim, certainly we're here to answer questions, give you facts, and see what we can do. So I'll be happy to answer questions. But let me get a glass of water first. Go ahead, man, no problem.
Hold on, just.
Probably the 9 worst words in English language because I'm from the government and I'm here to help. There isn't anything in the services that you offer that we need here in Delaware. The price that we paid per year to cover everything takes care of all the trash, takes care of pretty much everything. We're not worried about having to put double lanes in our streets because that's never going to happen. It's already been taken care of. You probably spoke more about taxes to a community here that is completely against taxes because we're not going to get any services from the West End or the South End. And they tried to annex the area around Helotes. And Helotes went to town and annexed their own area, so now their town is a little bit bigger than they were. And if they want to raise their own taxes, they will. But they haven't, because they don't want to. Because the people there don't want their taxes raised. There's a lot of things that you offer us that we really do not need here. We're safe, we have a very safe community environment. We have beautiful facilities that we all have access to.
That's not a question.
That's not a question. It's not a question.
Thank you very much. I did have a question. The question is, what services can you offer us that's really going to offset the taxes that we're going to have to pay?
I think the primary, other than the new fire station emergency service, a few blocks away, and the higher level of service there, would really be the ability of you all to be engaged in
she was asking the same question I was going to. What the services that you're offering we already have here, so there's really no advantage to us here in
Right, again, it's
HCR.
basically being able to have a say in the future of this Alamo Ranch area. And it increased the level of service perhaps from the fire station and emergency services. And I think it's a beautiful community. It's well planned, it's well laid out. You've got this facility here. I think there's some parts you've got trails, and you've got all sorts of things that you don't have the city to build for you. But you're an island in the middle of what's going to be a huge area, over 100,000 people here on the west side. They want to protect that investment. You have no say in that right now. Yes, sir.
Question.
Mr. Dugan, the sales tax for the city of San Antonio is at 8.25, is that correct?
Right.
Okay. I believe out here in the county, there is about 1.50% in this area that's still available. So basically like a mud or like a transportation road district could come in, and I think that comes down to about 0.5%. After talking to the controller's office and getting a general figure for our area, this area all the way across the Highway 90 back up to Highway 211, there's about $3.95 million in sales tax that are just out there still. That leaves it open for anyone to come in. So if the city of San Antonio came in, would they accrue that extra 1.50%?
The sales tax would, basically the sales tax that has now would be in effect here.
Right.
Right. Not in commercial properties.
Okay. And then, so what I was under the understanding from the controller's office is that if we did put a sales tax, because we have a lot of people that come through our area, our community, I live in the community as well, that come through and make purchases, on goods and stuff like that. And they don't contribute to the ESD like y'all do as far as property taxes. So they come through, they get, Lord forbid, get in an accident or need our services, they're pretty much passing through and getting it for free. But if they did get sales tax, if we did have sales tax in place, they would be contributing to the emergency services because they came in, bought something that we're taxed on, and that went to the emergency services. So,
Right, and basically, let me just give you some answers to do with the emergency service districts. The state law requires that if the city were to annex this area, and it's a percentage or a big portion of the emergency service district tax base, that we have to, pay back. We have to pay off any indebtedness, take over all that, take over the facilities or purchase those facilities. In other words, the city would just have to take the entire capital investment there. The ratio of the percentage, if we annex 50% of the tax base, we have to pay 50% of your debt and all the different stations that were in the district.
correct. Yeah, I guess, I don't know how far back the agreement goes, but I know the city, Bear County is pretty unique in the state of Texas. Emergency service districts can't go in debt more than $20,000, I think, with the city of San Antonio. So that kind of limits fire departments out in the county, for, accruing debt and getting equipment and apparatus like that. Yes, we do on property taxes. We do get about $4 million in this whole area. If sales tax is in place, you're looking at almost another $4 million. I mean, that would, we talk about lowering ISO. Right now we are at 4.8B. So 4 in this area, 8B with areas that are non-hydrants, or 8 were areas that are non-hydrants. And if you're outside the 5-mile range, you're out at 10. That's one thing my chief here and I were looking at, lowering the ISO rating. We have another survey coming up here soon. And we have a potential consultant that we're dealing with out of Georgia. He got an ESD in Montgomery County, just north of Harris County, an ISO 1. The first ESD in the state to have an ISO 1. So the potential is there. I mean, he came and looked at our services we currently have, and we could get lowered down to a 2. So that's all I have.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, so let me get this straight. If the city goes ahead with what they're proposing, it would be 4 years from now before they could say no more apartment complexes on Alamo Ranch Parkway?
Yes, that's true.
4 more years of building on Alamo Ranch Parkway.
Right.
Oh, wow. How many more
Oh,
CDSs would we have?
No, let me step back from that. No, when the limited purpose annex would go into effect, that is when the zoning goes into effect. The zoning we have to negotiate with the owners, and that zoning process is a public process that you would have the people to come and speak to before the city council. So you could have a say in that.
Okay, so how long are we talking about?
Because we're gonna start this study a year from now, would be about 2 years from now, not 4. Yes, sir.
One of the services that you all propose is street cleaning, street maintenance. We're a gated community. Are you gonna come in here and clean our streets and pave the streets and repair them?
Probably not. Probably they could do some of the cleaning if you wanted it, but certainly the repairs are probably from the private streets that we have to do the homeowners association.
What happens if we take the gates down?
I didn't mind just like that in Rogers Ranch, and I believe we pay a big fee every month, $100 government for those kind of services. Any other questions in the back there?
I'd like to know if you've done a survey of the other Delwood properties in the western part of the United States and up north of Boston to get some idea if they're have done what you're talking, you want us to do, to be part of the city. I don't think they are.
I mean, you talk about us using the roads. 151 is the state highway, the state pays for that. 1604 is the state highway, the state pays for maintenance on it. I-10 is federal and they pay for that. So we don't use too many of the city roads to get from here, point A to point B in San Antonio. When we get off, where do we get off? Maybe downtown. And so does every tourist that comes into the city. And they don't pay city tax. My other question is, 2 weeks ago on a Saturday newspaper, there was an article about city parks in the city right now, not the planned city. And it said, it had a quote in there specifically about this area saying that the city doesn't know how they would pay for parks in this area. They can't afford to do the upkeep and the stuff on parks that they have already. So, if they're going to annex us, number one, is the building of parks, libraries, and everything else that they're going to give us mandated by law, so they have to put them in a time frame, or can they sit there and say, well, it doesn't fit our budget at this time, and kick the can down the street for 10, 15, 20 years until they're making the 71 million off of us again.
Right.
My question is there a plan laid out for bonds and everything else to build the fire station, the police station, the parks, and the library?
Right.
In the, let's see, it'd be 2 years, so in my estimate, it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 years.
Right. The state law says that the equal level of services have to be provided in the services plan adopted in that 3-year interim purpose period. It has to be in year 2 and year 3 before it's annexed permanently. And it's there that would be all laid out with the bond issue, the whole plan to provide those services, what they would be, how much they would cost, how they would be financed. Then the city has 2 to 3 years from the date of annexation, which would be 2020, to provide those services.
Now, I also read where there's another area and they still haven't gotten the services.
Right. That was one reason the city has not annexed over the last 10 years. Number of people, because the city was trying to provide services for those areas annexed in the early part of the 2000s and late 1990s.
And they have the funds now.
Yes. That's why the city council said move ahead with this study, because that fiscal situation is now very positive. This is the best financed city in the country. Bond rating the highest we can get for any large city, and they can borrow money for the lowest rate in the city.
Question on San Antonio's debt. I understand that part of our taxes that we would pay to San Antonio annex go to debt service. Can you tell us, with all the different types of debt, revenue debt, tax debt, whatever kind of debts there are, how much debt is San Antonio in?
No, I can't tell you that off the top of my head, but it's easy to find out. It's posted on the city's budget website.
Would we be responsible for paying, of course, that debt?
That's included in the city tax rate. It's a percentage of that.
I'd just like to know about the District Two. Is it a volunteer fire department or a regular fire department?
We are a career fire department.
So you're not a volunteer?
No, so we are
Yeah, I was
career.
told you were a volunteer fireman.
No. We are career, sorry about that. We are career firefighters.
Okay.
We all hold certifications and Texas Commission on Fire Protection, which is that, they regulate our commission. They're based out of Austin, Texas. We do have reserves that are commissioned. They've been through a whole firefighter. That's part of our process to get hired on, is you start off as a reserve, and when a vacancy opens up, then we hire within. And so you start off as a reserve firefighter. But like I said, I do live here in the community. I'm very concerned just as much as y'all are. I actually live further than 5 miles from a fire station, so my ISO rating is a 10. So trust me, I'm gonna work and try my best to get that ISO down to a 2. And to be either equivalent to the city of San Antonio or less. And you can guarantee that. There's just so much more I'd like to talk to you about. I know we're time limited. If y'all have any questions, feel free to come up to me. I mean, y'all already paying the taxes for fire and EMS services, And I mean, we're looking at sales tax. If we can get sales tax in place, that will actually help lower property taxes. So we can come back and lower property taxes and put money back in y'all's pocket, and lowering the ISO, put money back in y'all's pocket, the community, as taxpayers.
I wanted to show you this one device right here. Most of our presentation is back in case questions came up, but I had the question. I didn't know. How much does it cost really in terms of the budget to run cities of different sizes? And so we did this survey. In San Antonio, with 1.4 million people, cost about $1,600 per person to run the city. So in other words, to take the city budget divided by population, and that's the cost per person. So if you have a household of 2, it'd be like $3,000 to run the city. For a city like Kerrville, 22,000 people, it costs $2,000 a person. New Braunfels, with 63,000 people, costs $2,500 per person. San Marcos, with 54,000, which is about the size this area would be if it were incorporated, would be about $3,000 per person. Georgetown, up here at $4,000 per person. Why the difference? Big difference is because of the commercial and industrial base San Antonio has. We had a year's worth of investment on properties, and so the cost per person for government is really much lower than the medium-sized cities that we were talking about in terms of the corporation here. So do that research over the next year when you're looking at that, because this is really the tax rate is one thing, but actually what people pay is quite another. How much it costs us to run a government is very expensive. Yes, sir.
Right here. Okay. Isn't your comparison or apples to oranges? What are the tax rates for Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin? Comparable.
Well, right, but we're talking about cities like, I mean, if you consider incorporated here, we're talking about a city of 50,000. We're not talking about Houston or Dallas.
That's not the question. Your comment would be how does San Antonio compare to Houston?
But if you were part of the San Antonio, then the cost per person is that.
Okay, second question. How has the annexation process changed in the last 20 years?
In the past, there weren't any regulations at all. Basically, 20 years ago, even 15 years ago, you can annex down the road. That happened a lot. You could surround properties. You didn't have to have a service plan, and you didn't have to have any program in terms of what would be built, in terms of infrastructure improvements.
Disagree with you. We were in Barnum subdivision, which is over there, Hazel and Bandera Road, and all those things were promised. They said state law required them. They were never delivered.
Yeah, well, back 15, 20 years ago, state law didn't really require it.
They did require it. At least we were told they did.
Right.
What is the penalty?
What's
If they
changed
don't
now?
apply?
Well, what's changed now is that the council has to adopt these detailed plans and actually finance plans, get them into bond issues, which people vote on. People might not vote on them, but they usually do. And it means that you've got to have an implementation plan for it before it's like words. You should. There wasn't anything to enforce it.
But implementation plans don't mean rubber on the road.
Guys and ladies, it's all political once you get down to it. It's going to be a decision by a city council and the vote, depending on the current situation, the budgets. all that kind of stuff. You know how it works. So, you know, we gotta be honest about it. So, it's always a political process in our government and our democracy. My main message to you is, you need to be able to be involved in it. If you're concerned about it, and you're not now. Yes, sir.
So what happens if the plan at the end of the annexation process, when all the services and the infrastructure improvements can't be done, should that happen? What's the liability or what's the recourse?
Right now, there is no recourse. What could happen, and has happened, it did happen on the south side, they would say, well, we're not gonna annex that. Drop it. One vote, 7 people, and it's not annexed. One vote, 7 people, and it is annexed. 4 years from now. That's the way it works here. And, you know, they, up to that vote, you know, probably before Christmas 2020, is anything can change. There's no commitments for anybody. All this is studied. What's changed in that 3-year limited purpose period is that zoning will take place. The zoning will go away if they don't annex it. It goes back to the county, no zoning. You know, all the services, procurement, public health, they'd be, building permitting would stop if it were not annexed. And that did happen to about 10 square miles on the south side of the city near the plant down there, Toyota plant. That was just rock. When it was too costly to provide services, that people really didn't want it. And so when they annexed the Toyota plant in the area of the city south, they didn't annex about 20 square miles on either side back when they built the plant. Yes, sir.
Yes, the one thing that I've lived in the area for quite some time before I moved here. And when we look at the maps, it's hard to see, but the San Antonio boundary follows 471 out a ways, and the Alamo Ranch shopping area, is that not part of the city as well?
Right.
So all of the businesses that are along 471 are already inside the city, is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, 471 and 1604, that's already in the city.
Right.
No.
And, yeah, no, it is, a lot of it is, because if you looked, it was white, you could barely see it there. But I used to live at West Creek, and there was an area that was supposed to have been, you know, some of you asking about apartments. And some lady mentioned last meeting that there were some apartments that are being built that were not what somebody would feel like they would like to live by. Well, we ended up having an area that was right outside of Military Drive, right on the outside of 1604, which we thought we should be able to have a say over what should be built there, and it became a low-income housing project. And we were hit by that. Just like he says, you're in the county and there isn't anybody looking out for you. And we got hit by that, and we had an immediate increase spike in crime, and it took a while for it to come down. And West Creek was known at the time as being one of the better developments in the area. But the boundaries are already there. If you're thinking that those businesses would be part of your incorporation, it may not be, because it's already in the city.
Yes, sir. Right here.
You're from the, I understand you're from the city planning, is that correct? And you're planning of annexations, et cetera, what are your plans for emergency services? When would you start building? Where would they be located?
Yes, the fire department's doing the study now, where to put the 5 new fire stations that all these 6 are centered on. It would be right in the middle of the Alamo Ranch community, right on the main parkways where they intersect, the highest access point to everything else.
And when would that construction start?
There would be a phasing thing, there'd be a temporary building first with the full equipment and full complement of people, and then a full major building would be built after that.
Sir, I asked when, not what.
Okay, the plan would have to be done and completed by 3 years after the property is annexed. 3 years after the property is annexed.
So would they have to enter an agreement with the ESD?
They'd have to either purchase the ESD facilities or have some kind of agreement with it.
What guarantee is there that it will occur?
Well, by state law, we have to provide services equal to what's adjacent right across 1604 in the city limits, which is at level 2 in terms of ISO rating for emergency services and fire. And that's what the council did.
I asked what guarantee would it occur?
They put it in a bond issue, and that would be a financial plan for it.
Bond issue.
We don't see vote on bonds.
Yeah, they would have to vote.
Bond issue.
People that are in the city. So they just approved a couple, $600 million bond issue last year and 3 years before that.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, sir, front.
I just wanted to point out, like, if we were able to incorporate into the city of Olive Branch, we do have a commercial tax base. The new Santiago Theater is currently being built, will be included in the city limits, as well as any commercial business on the left side of Clayper Road after Westward Loop will be included as well. We also have 2 gas stations, 2 pharmacies. We're having an HEB built pretty soon too, so we will have a commercial tax entity. So I just wanted to point that out.
Let me correct you on HEB, there is no HEB coming. At least not in the foreseeable future.
No, that's not true.
They own the property in order to keep other competitors at bay.
That's not true.
That was told me just 2 days ago. Okay.
First, I'd like to thank you for showing up this evening. You represented your effort quite well. I'm glad to see that you've explained it to some degree. I have several questions. One of them is there's some budget analysis that has been done and is in the process of being done. If I understand correctly, that will go on for approximately 4 years, at which time the city will decide whether they want to proceed with annexation or not. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Oh my gosh, that's good. Okay. Would you be kind enough to elaborate on what's involved in those budgetary analysis?
Well, in general, basically, first of all, a high-level fiscal analysis was already done looking at potential growth, the revenues coming off of that, and the cost of city services to provide services for the 50,000 or so people that would be in this area at equal level of everything existing right across the way inside 1604, across over hill areas and all that. That's a very high-level analysis. Now we're going to come back and say, what's the services plan for the area once the properties are zoned, in terms of what would be going in to support so much commercial, so much office, so much residential, certain densities, and then we would calculate what the services would need to be for that, what road improvements need to be made in the whole area, what park improvements, all those types of things, and then how much it would cost for the operations for people to maintain, to extend all the maintenance and all the services out to the area. All that would be done in detail and put in a services plan 2 years into the limited purpose time frame, which would be open and pursued and reviewed by anybody who wants to. That all has to be presented by 2 councils publicly. And then they have to take the results of that and put it into a bond issue or a finance plan that shows where the money will come from to pay for all those services.
If I understand, the goal then would be for the city to collect as much revenue to offset the expenses, so the net would be a good benefit. benefit for the city and our locality.
Right, and that doesn't reach that point for about 8 years after it's annexed. Up until then, there's a deficit from the area, which the city, other parts of the city, the overall general fund covers.
Okay, I have another question, if you don't mind. Your department, is it involved in the planning of the infrastructure for our area?
Well,
Does that come under your?
no, I'm not sure anybody's planning infrastructure for the area except for developers.
Nobody's willing to.
Basically, the city development office plans the roads. The roads that you have here, the major arterial streets, Alamo Parkway, and Alamos, those are part of what's called a master development thoroughfare plan. That's what the subdivisions, which the planning commission approves, have to incorporate in it. The land uses and all those other things, that's up to the developer. And so they just file a plan administratively, and then there's no disapproval of that.
Well, the reason I ask is if that is even remotely under your jurisdiction, you need to call the people in that are laying out the infrastructure, because there's going to be a lot of growth here, and the growth has already exceeded our infrastructure. The traffic here is years ahead of any of the planning, and the time to do planning is before you're stuck with a problem.
Well, that's so right, sir. That's what we're trying to do. Unfortunately, the city's had no, management of growth in any kind of place outside the city limits now for decades, and the county can't do it by law. So you have what you have based on the goodwill of the developers that put in these projects. And they don't necessarily, we try to get them to hook up together, but sometimes they don't interconnect. There's not enough road capacity. The developers only have to pay their fair share, and if their share is 50% of the traffic from a new subdivision, they pay for 50% of the road. That means the county needs to come up with the rest of it. If it were annexed, the city would have to come up with the rest of it with a bond issue or a capital improvement program from the general fund. So the system here is not ideal. I've worked in 10 other states. This is not the best way to plan places, but this is what we have. We have to work with it, and we're trying to do the best we can.
Is on bonds, correct me if I'm wrong, the total city votes on bond issues.
Correct. And if there's an agreement with them arranged to provide the services, the city would have to find some other way to pay for it.
In the same time frame.
I can't tell what the council would do for private residents, but generally, there's an obligation to provide equal level of service here, or any place we have.
We have one more time for one more question.
Yes, sir. Right here.
Just for some clarification, so far, the city decides whether annexation occurs. Outside of incorporation, is there anything that the residents have a say in that process?
Unfortunately not, and unfortunately there's no say in incorporation either. That's up to the city council too. And this is all laid out by state law, and we've had that discussion many times with other residents, other neighborhoods. It's all up to the city council. No, county doesn't have a say, residents don't have a say. They can say something, but there's not. They can come and say, we don't want to do it, come to public hearings, and the council will listen. Like we told you last time, we cut out 40% of the last annexation. A lot of that from citizen concerns, but it's up to them.
Okay, one last thing.
Before we thank Mr. Dugan, Mr. Cash over here is going to take, you can sign a petition that you'll have in the back of the room there if you want to go ahead and do it. And, okay, one quickie. Quick question?
For me, you skated around two questions that were asked. Number one, you are able to park in the public buildings. We are HRC, we pay a fee for that. That fee will be gone, the city will take it over? No, I didn't think so.
would not pay for Del Webb community services. No, you would continue to do that.
In that graph, it showed San Antonio, and it showed those other towns. The gentleman was right, it was apples and oranges, it didn't tell us anything, other than the fact that a graph was built to show that San Antonio was less. As you said, what happens to Dallas, Austin, Houston?
Yeah, they have higher tax rates in San Antonio.
Pardon?
They have higher taxes in San Antonio. People pay a lot more. Yes, sir.
This will be the last question.
I have a very quick question. I think the answer is no. But if we are annexed by the city, does that exert any additional protection for the aquifer and removal of trees?
No, not anything additional. Well, in a sense it does. In terms of the pervious cover, it doesn't change, I mean, it doesn't make it more or less removed. What it does is give you all in the city much more control over what land use is actually put in here. How much is going to be homes, how much is going to be apartments, how much commercial, how much is going to be paid. Right now, we don't have a say in that. Or you.
All right, everybody, we want to thank Mr. Dugan for taking his own personal.
Thank you. One last thing, if you want to email us, if you want to send something in, you want more personal question answered, just do it, and we'll get back with you as soon as we can.